Hey everyone! So my last clay video was super popular, but a lot of people were asking if they could leave out the joint compound or substitute it, but unfortunately for that recipe, it's not possible. So I wanted to put together a tutorial on how to make a different type of air drying clay, which should, hopefully, use ingredients that you already have around the house. This stuff is called cold porcelain. It has sort of a translucent quality, and you don't need a kiln to fire it in order to make it harden, which is how I assume it got its name. Anyway, let's get started. You'll need 1 cup PVA glue. I'm using Elmer's glue, but you could just use stuff like tacky glue or wood glue. The clay does take on the color of the glue, however, so if you use wood glue, be aware of that. 1 cup of cornstarch, 1 tablespoon of lemon juice or lime juice, 1 tablespoon of baby oil or mineral oil, and some lotion. I used Pond's cold cream, a microwavable craft-only bowl, and a craft-only mixing utensil. You'll also need access to a microwave. There are versions of cold porcelain that don't require cooking, but this is not one of them. Dump everything into a microwave-safe, crafts-only bowl and mix together. Pop it into the microwave for 30 seconds. Take it out and stir. Pop it back in for another 30 seconds. Take it out, stir. Pop it back in again for another 30 seconds. Take it out, stir. And depending on the power of your microwave, this might be the last time that it needed to be microwaved. If it looks like it has big chunky bits, but it's still a little bit liquidy, then it's ready for the next step. Apparently the power of my microwave wasn't very high, so I wasn't ready for this yet. But the mix was, right on the verge of being ready. I popped it in for another 30 seconds, but I wish I had only gone for 15 seconds. Take it out and stir. This is what it looks like when it's just a little bit overcooked. It's right on the brink though, so I figured I'd finish this batch out and see if I needed to try to fix it. Spread a dollop of the lotion onto a clean surface, not on your dirty craft table where you do all of your crafts. Dump the glue mixture onto the surface, lotion your hands up, and start kneading. Be careful, it'll be hot. You'll probably need to wait a few minutes until it's not as hot, but this stuff kneads together better the hotter the mixture is, so don't let it cool off too much. Knead it for a few minutes until the clay feels nice and smooth and isn't sticking. You may need to re-lotion the surface and your hands as you go. If it's not coming together and it stays sticky and wet, then you didn't cook it long enough, and you could throw it back into the bowl and cook it at 5 to 10 second intervals, stirring between until it's a little bit more cooked. When you're done kneading, form it into a log, spread some lotion around the outside of the clay, and wrap it up in some plastic wrap. Then throw it into a resealable bag or an airtight container, like Tupperware or something like that. Let it sit for about 24 hours. And now you can see how it turned out. Pull a little bit of the clay off, form it into a ball, and pull it apart. If it was perfect, the pieces would form into nice long teardrop shapes. If it comes apart really crumbly, then it's overcooked. To fix this, you can make another batch of clay and deliberately undercook it, and then knead it together with the overcooked clay. It should even it out. Since mine was just barely overcooked, I decided I'd try a technique I learned when I took ceramics to help reconstitute clay that was a little bit too dry. I poked a few holes into the clay log and poured some water into them. Then I carefully wrapped it back up and let it sit another day to let it soak in a little bit, which actually really didn't end up happening, but that's what I did. So now I kneaded it again to mix in the water. And it seemed to have worked. Here's the pull test after adding the extra water. Looks good to me. Next week, I'll show you a few things that you can make with this clay. But for now, let's see how this clay performs. With the clay as it is, it dries sort of translucent, but it's super easy to add color. Here I'll do an example of the clay as it is, and then some that I mix with white paint. And I'm going to just use a mold that I had made for a previous project. I took a chunk of the clay and squished it into the mold. There was some extra, so I decided to squish it out really thin to see how that would turn out. Then I took another piece of clay and squirted a little bit of white paint into it and kneaded it in. It's going to be a little bit messy, so if you don't want to get paint on you, then use some gloves. After it was kneaded in evenly, I squished it into the mold and then flattened the extra bit of clay. And then I let them dry. It takes about a day or two for the thicker pieces to dry, like these molded pieces. And here's the difference between the clay with no paint versus the clay with white paint. With the flat pieces, you can really see how the clay with no paint is more translucent, while the one with white paint is opaque. You should also take note that the clay shrinks quite a bit. It shrinks about 10%, and if you're using different colors, they become a little bit darker. I hope you all enjoyed this project. If you did, please leave a like. If you want to see more, then feel free to subscribe. I post DIY videos every Thursday. And like I mentioned earlier, tune in next week and I'll show you a few things that you can make with this clay. You can follow me on Twitter, Tumblr, Instagram, or Pinterest, and I'll leave the information of those down below. If you have any questions or suggestions for future videos, please leave a comment down below, and I'll see you next week.